afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. Alyssa Corman, Ed Carson here with a look at today's action. And in addition to taking a look at the major indexes today in a quiet-ish session, Ed, we're also going to be checking in on Apple and a couple of other interesting moves.
Yeah, we're going to take a look, also look at Apple Chipmaker Qorvo, which ran up today, and ZipRecruiter, which ran up and ran down.
That can happen. Well, we'll discuss some strategies for handling that type of action, especially with those wild IPO stocks. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes, starting off with the NASDAQ composite here. So the tech-heavy index gaining 0.2% on the day, while the S&P 500 and Dow finished up fractionally, the Russell 2000 down on the day. So the NASDAQ continuing to lead the charge here, Ed.
Yeah, and you can see it's now clearly above the prior resistance area, that consolidation area. Actually having a quiet day was probably a good thing. We're actually getting up there, starting to talk about the 50-day line. It's been a while since we've had to worry about the NASDAQ being extended from the 50-day line. It's not extended. We normally say when it's like you have to get to 6% or so before you start worrying about it. And as we saw in August 2020, and we saw, for much of early 2021, that you can get more extended and keep going, but it does raise the risks of a pullback when it gets there. So a quiet session, staying close to the 50-day reasonably is not a bad thing.
And also taking a look at the S&P 500 here, inching up, and it is just 2.2% above the 50-day at this time.
Yeah, so it's just hanging out there, just a nudging higher. Today was not that meaningful, but it was a nice solid session.
And the Dow, while we're at it, still above the 50-day line, which it was just ever so recently able to retake. And we obviously want to see it holding above those levels.
Yeah, and it faded a little bit. Some of the bank stocks that were lifting it, and maybe some of the energy stocks came off their highs, but that's fine. I mean, it's above the 50-day line. Would like to see that eventually move, but the NASDAQ is clearly in the driver's seat right now.
Yep, and the Russell pulling back again today, down about 0.5%, but still above its 10-day and its 21-day, and still a little bit of space above the 50-day line. But since tech is in focus, let's go ahead and take a look at Apple, gaining 1.2% today. Looks like volume was a little bit light, Ed, but it is nearing its highs from just a couple of months ago in late April after the quarterly report. So could it be on breakout watch?
I mean, it is on breakout watch. It's less than 1% from being there. You make a good point about the volume. Volume has been light the last several days, which we don't care so much on the down days, but having really light volume on these up days, both of them over 1% and not seeing volume. So people should be aware of that. On the upside, it's nice to see it move. With the S&P not going anywhere today, the RS line is sort of picking up a little bit, but again, sometimes it can be lumbering. This is not the leader, even among the giant techs. But I think you still have to stand up and notice when, it is moving toward a buy point, at that situation.
And taking a look at Apple chip supplier Qorvo, a big move today for that stock, up 4.5%, so up almost 7% for the week. Now, we did see some volume behind this move, and it seems like today could have been an opportunity for investors to initiate a position, even though it isn't quite yet at those highs from April.
Yeah, and if you look at the prior two breakouts we've had, they've ultimately sort of not necessarily completely fizzled, but they've come back down into the base. So it would have been hard to hold those situations. So buying early is not such a bad thing with this one. Buying there or buying off the 50-day line as it broke a trend line. You could have even bought this morning and still been pretty close to that, into those levels. But, so now it's sort of getting up there in that regard. But nice move. They got an upgrade, a price target hike from Barclays. Barclays also said nice things about Skyworks. So it's moving up the right side. So definitely one to watch, especially with chip makers coming back in force in general.
So good to see this participation from other chip names. So maybe a little bit of a broadening, and SMH up 2.4% yesterday, breaking out, extending its gains today. So it really seems like the sector as a whole is continuing to move in the right direction.
Yeah, and Qorvo and Skyworks, and I can't remember which one was beating the other. Skyworks, which also got a price target hike and doesn't look quite as good, but these were the two biggest winners in the S&P 500 today. So definitely chips leading the way, and volume this is the third straight gain in volume for Skyworks. So not the prettiest chart sort of racing up. It'd be nice if it formed a handle, but
Mhm.
just something to keep an eye on. It's nice to see that, if you're looking at something like Qorvo, it's nice to see other stocks that are in a similar field doing well as well.
Right. Notable action there. And ZipRecruiter, a wild day for this IPO stock, tried to break out of an IPO base, but ended up reversing lower, closing down over 2% on the day. Ed, we can hop on over to the weekly chart. It looks a little bit better there. And, it is only Tuesday, but these IPO stocks can just be so wild. So maybe not all too surprising to see a failed breakout at this time for ZipRecruiter, at least
Yeah.
for today.
Yeah, I mean, this is just IPOs are high risk, high reward, and there wasn't much you could have done about this. Look, it's has some pretty good growth, certainly on the earnings side. It's from a really good group. A lot of stocks are doing well from that group. I mean, we've talked about Upwork, we've talked about AMN Healthcare. There's other stocks in there. So this one didn't just go up for the first 2 minutes and then come back down. It actually rose for a while. So there's not necessarily this sometimes happens. It had about an hour in there where it's like, hey, this is looking really good. I'll be honest, we were considering this for stock of the day today. I'm glad we didn't make it stock of the day, but it would have been a nice, they would have had to do a rewrite about midway through writing it. So there's, you can try to buy early. It's like you try to buy as early as possible. Maybe you could have bought from last week's high, there was almost a handle. I mean, that wouldn't have really saved you from losing money. You just would have minimized your loss. I don't know. It would have been tough to find a really great early entry. You could have tried to buy right at the low, but boy, that would have been steep. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no real, and you can try to buy early, and you have to have, and I think you talk about this a lot, an exit strategy, maybe taking a smaller position. If you're going to accept a larger loss on an IPO because you don't want to get whipsawed in and out, you may want to start with a smaller position so you don't end up taking a really big, nominal loss.
Right. And we do talk a lot about the personality of a stock. And oftentimes that's based on the trading history. With IPOs, you don't have that trading history. So it may be a little bit more of a gamble from that perspective, but you can at least infer a little bit of the personality of IPO stocks in general, at least what we've been seeing this cycle. And it is very indicative of that kind of feast or famine type of situation. So smaller position size, I definitely agree there, Ed. But we'll have to see how ZipRecruiter does for the rest of the week, because looking at this weekly chart, it's still looking pretty interesting. So guess we can't count it out yet.
Absolutely not. But it's just really tricky. And it's like, and when stocks reverse on you, there's not, you can try to come ways to minimize situations, but stocks that fall, it's really hard to win on stocks that
Mhm.
fall.
It is. All right. Well, thanks so much, Ed. We appreciate that. And make sure to tune into IBD Live tomorrow for more insights from the team, where we will also be joined by Charles Harris, longtime O'Neill portfolio manager under Bill O'Neill, IBD founder. And so we're looking forward to having him back on the show. We'll see you then, investors.com/IBD Live tomorrow morning, and right back here after the close.